If you're a PoE 2 player looking to play PoE 1 for the first time, today's video will help you make that transition more easily. One of the things that makes PoE 1 so good is also the thing that tends to turn off players, and that is just the amount of stuff in the game. In today's video, I'm going to go over a whole lot of the major differences between the two games, but then also help you play this game and have fun with it without getting overwhelmed. The most important piece of advice, and I asked so many people this, I said, what is your number one piece of advice for PoE 2 players playing PoE 1 for the first time? And almost every single one said this: focus on what you are doing and not what you aren't doing. You are going to find things in this game that you do not understand. There's going to be so many league mechanics and crafting things and builds, and just there's so much that you're not going to understand. Don't worry about it. Focus on one or two things to start out. Play one build, go into the end game, focus on one or two league mechanics, and don't stress about everything that you are not doing. You can have a really, really rich, full experience with PoE just doing one or two things. And the thing you should be focusing on, instead of, oh no, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, what's that? Don't worry about that. Just do what you are doing, focus on that, and have fun. The moment you'll get addicted to this game is when you realize, instead of saying, oh no, there's so much stuff in the game, it's when you go, oh, there's so much stuff in this game and there's so much cool stuff. Your mindset will shift from being overwhelmed and scared to being, wow, I can't wait to play this game for the next 5,000 hours. So that's the first piece of advice. So with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the major differences between PoE 1 and PoE 2. The first thing is that sockets and gems are very different. In PoE 2, you have a dedicated skill gem page, and you put your skills in there, and then you support them with your support gems. PoE 1, however, you have sockets in your gear, and you put your gems and your support gems in those sockets. So in two-handed weapons, like bows and two-handed maces and whatnot, axes, you can have up to 6 sockets. Body armor, 6 sockets. Helmet, gloves, and boots is 4 sockets. And then one-handed weapons have 3 sockets, and offhands generally have 3 sockets, maximum. However, these do not naturally roll with the maximum number of sockets, and you can affect this with the Jeweler's Orb, which you might be familiar with. However, in PoE 1, there is only one kind of Jeweler's Orb, and this will randomly change the number of sockets you get on the item. So you can spam these to change how many sockets you get. And then the other thing is that skill gems are only supported by sockets that are linked together. So PoE 2, all links are automatic, whereas in PoE 1, we have orbs of fusing. This reforges the links between sockets on an item. So this will randomly change these links. So if you have, let's say, a skill gem here and then 3 support gems, they will only count as being affected if these are all linked together. So this is one of the, probably, it's going to be one of the most jarring things for PoE 2 players. The other thing, though, is that you can only put gems of the same color into a socket of that same color. So here I have a green gem. This cannot go in a red or a blue socket. It can only go into a green socket. So this creates a bit of friction, and there are ways that you can manipulate this with the crafting bench, which I'll speak about in a little bit. All right, the next thing is that PoE 1 does not have WASD, at least not yet, unless it's been announced in this latest patch. So you're gonna have to use click to move. And the other thing is that instead of having a dodge roll, we have movement skills. So these are specific skill gems that allow you to travel more quickly. So you have things like shield charge, which we have in PoE 2, leap slam, same PoE 2. Then there are other things like blink arrow, whirling blades. This will like let you dive forward with your weapons if you're dual wielding. Then we have other things that are popular like flame dash. So instead of having to dodge roll, you can move very, very quickly just with a push of a button. Most builds make use of at least 1, if not 2 movement skills. The other thing is there's no sprint. And this takes us into our next section, which is flasks. So PoE 1, you have a life flask and a mana flask. PoE 2, you have 5 flask slots, but you can do with them what you want. You could put 5 life flasks here. You could put 5 mana flasks, 2 life, 3 mana, whatever you want. But there is something very interesting in PoE 1 that is different from the charm system in PoE 2, and that is utility flasks. There's all these special kinds of flasks that grant you bonuses during effect. So this one is a ruby flask. It grants you maximum fire res and fire resistance during effect. There's other ones like this one, grants phasing and spell suppression. Phasing lets you run through monsters unimpeded. There's a whole lot of these different ones. There's resistance ones. There's ones that give you a better crit chance, ones that increase your armor or your evasion rating. There is one that is very popular though, and instead of a sprint function in PoE 1, we have Quicksilver Flask. This gives you increased movement speed. So when I push this, I'm moving way faster. This is a very high-end character, by the way, so these have durations and they consume charges similar to life flasks and mana flasks in PoE 2. And also what is important is that these can roll with modifiers that increase their effect. So just like life and mana flasks, you can get a white Quicksilver Flask and then you can affect it with Orbs of Transmutation and Orbs of Augmentation. So as a PoE 2 player, don't underestimate utility flasks. These are so strong. Even experienced PoE 1 players tend to underrate how powerful these are. So don't be scared of experimenting with these. Don't just go like 5 life flasks. Try using these different flasks and see what you can get. Quicksilver, very useful, especially early on for going faster. Things like an early granite flask for a bit of flat armor or evasion rating, or quartz so you can travel through monsters. These are all super useful. Let's talk about the passive tree. The major differences on the passive tree are, firstly, there is life on the passive tree. Believe it or not, there are things all over the tree that grant increased life. It's all over the place. Generally by endgame, for most softcore builds, you're looking to get like 120% minimum life on the tree. But the other really cool thing about the passive tree are masteries. So once you have taken the notable from a wheel like this is a minion wheel, it unlocks a mastery, which allows you to get a specific bonus. So you can choose any one of these 6. This mastery is a minion offense mastery, and this will be shared across any other minion offense wheels on the tree. We can have a look at some of the masteries I've taken. So over here, we've got a life wheel, and I've taken 15% increased maximum life if there are no life modifiers on your equipped body armor. I could have got that down here if I wanted, or I could get it up here, but masteries are super cool and super strong. There's also a lot of other stuff that affects your passive tree. I'm not going to go into too much of this. This might look familiar, but there are also cluster jewels, which are itemized things that can extend your passive tree. You can actually craft these yourself to get cluster jewel modifiers. So there's a lot more flexibility on the tree. The masteries make it so that you're getting value from pretty much any wheel. There's not so much of the upside downside of like 40% increased damage, but your attack 5% slower. It's less of that. The next thing is to do with Ascendancy. So in PoE 2, you have the option of doing Trial of Sekhmet or Trial of Chaos. PoE 1, there's just one thing, and this is the Lord's Labyrinth. So throughout the campaign, you're going to find these different mini trials that you have to complete. I do have a written guide on where you can find these, and also all these tips. If you want, I'll link those in the description. But as you do the campaign, you unlock the Labyrinth, and then the Cruel Labyrinth, Merciless Labyrinth, and then the Eternal Labyrinth. This is a series of interconnected rooms that you run through. There's a boss that you have to fight 3 times. After you've beaten him the 3rd time, you get to unlock your Ascendancy. Thing in PoE 1 is that Ascendancies are really strong. If you look at even this one, the amount of text generally on these is much longer. There's more that you get out of it. This is it's like a medium core challenge with these series of rooms you have to navigate through. If you die, you have to start again from the beginning. But a lot of people prefer this over Trial of Sekhmet and the other one. The next thing is, you're probably looking down here at my mana and wondering, what is that? So in PoE 1, there is no spirit. Instead, you reserve your mana to cast your permanent buffs, which are generally referred to in PoE 1 as auras. So over here, I have this Hatred Aura. This reserves 30.56% of my mana. Usually, it actually reserves 50%, but there are ways that you can reduce the amount of reservation so that you can fit in more auras into your build. So most permanent buffs in PoE 1 are going to reserve mana. Sometimes they'll reserve life. There's ways that you can make it reserve life instead, but there's no spirit. This does create a bit of a balancing act between how much mana you have reserved and how much you leave left over to cast your skills. The good news in PoE 1 is that skills generally have a far, far lower cost than in PoE 2. You're not running into those like 200-300 mana cost things. Like this Flame Dash costs 6. My Lightning Arrow, this costs 16. 129 mana, this is plenty. And there's tons of sources of mana recovery, mana on kill. You've got your mana flasks. So this is a bit of a balancing act. If you're following a build guide, it should explain this bit to you, but just to draw your attention that we have auras and auras reserve mana. The next thing, and this is a little bit weird, is that in PoE 2, you have just a vendor window. In PoE 1, you have a purchase window and a sell window. Instead of buying items for gold in PoE 1, instead you're buying it for things like Scrolls of Wisdom, Orbs of Transmutation, various currency items. And conversely, selling items doesn't grant you gold, it instead grants you currency of different types. So this one, the reason this is selling for a chromatic orb is because it has a green, red, and blue socket. If I were to just throw something like this in, that sells for alteration shards. This is a rather nebulous system that newer players kind of might not understand, but Dreamcore is going to be writing a guide on useful vendor recipes that you can go over and help you understand it. But this is something that if you sell, let's say, an identified magic item, it'll sell for alteration shards. If you sell an unidentified magic item, it sells for transmutation shards. And then a full set of those shards makes a full orb. Be aware that there is the buy window and the sell window, but this actually allows you to do some interesting stuff. In PoE 1, there are vendor recipes. You can sell a combination of items to a vendor to get a specific outcome. For example, a popular early one is something like an iron ring plus a blue gem will give you a sapphire ring. If you do that with a green gem, you get a topaz ring. If you do it with a red gem, you get a ruby ring. There are a whole lot of these, and as a new player, don't panic. Don't think there are like hundreds of these that you now need to learn. There's probably like 3 that most players use on any given playthrough. More knowledgeable players will make use of more, but just to draw your attention, there is this interesting vendor recipe system. Something useful to point out though is the 3-to-1 recipe. This is something that applies to a lot of different things in this game, but in PoE 2, we've got the reforging bench, but in PoE 1, what you can do is you can sell, for example, 3 maps of the same type to get 1 map a higher tier up. You can also do this with various like flasks. I've got 3 of these flasks. So if I go like 1, 2, 3, I get the next tier of flask up. I believe there is a help panel that explains some of these. So if you click down here, the help panel, and then scroll down here and read, which is a skill that most PoE 1 players do not have, it explains some basic vendor recipes over here. So probably next tip would be, you know what? There's this help panel in the game. You can read stuff and it explains it. It's even got cool little videos and stuff. So if you don't understand something, there is this in the game. The next big thing I want to go over is crafting. The foundations of PoE 1 and PoE 2's crafting might look similar, but there are a couple of big differences. The first big difference is this system known as Reforge. This doesn't exist in PoE 2 currently. What Reforge does is it re-rolls all the modifiers on an item. So for example, we have this Orb of Alteration. Reforges a magic item with new random modifiers. So in PoE 2, if we had rolled this, we'd kind of be stuck with it. But in PoE 1, we can do this. And we can change the modifiers that we have on this. We also have like a Chaos Orb. This is the, instead of an alteration which only affects magic items, we have a chaos orb which reforges a rare item. So with this, we could, this thing's got a lot of memory strands. Don't worry about it, whatever. We can change all the modifiers. It's like as if you got a new piece of equipment. That's a pretty nice rule. I think we'll keep that. So reforge is an important one to be aware of. The next thing is backtracking rarity. So in PoE 2, there's only one direction, and that is from normal to magic to rare, and that's it. PoE 1, there is this thing. It is an orb of scouring. Removes all modifiers from an item. So I could go from rare back down to white. I could make it blue again, make it rare, scour it, go back down. This is a very important mechanic that exists in the game, that you can go backwards in rarity, but I'd say without overwhelming you with the millions of different crafting systems that we have in this game, just be aware of those two. Is that we have reforge with systems like this, upgrades a normal item to a rare or reforges it with a guaranteed modifier. So you could take one of these and like to re-roll it. And then the other thing is scours and being able to go backwards in rarity. The other big thing is the crafting bench. If you watch any podcasts I've been on, I love the crafting bench. This is a system that allows you to add on an additional modifier to your item. So same as in PoE 2, a rare item can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. If you have an empty modifier, you can put on a bench crafted mod. And if you put in, let's say, a chest, there's a whole lot of modifiers that relate to that. So you can get a bit of life, a bit of armor, evasion rating, and then further down, there's some more interesting ones. You unlock these later on. And then there are the suffixes, resistances, attributes, whatever you need. These are also freely changeable. So here I got life. You can also re-roll it to get a different roll. This is now behind my camera. So I can go from life, I can then change that to armor. And on the right is the cost that is listed. So this costs 2 chaos orbs. And because I am re-rolling the crafted modifier, it costs an additional orb of scouring. So you can get what you need. This is particularly useful during the campaign when you want to cap your resistances. So you're not fully capped out on, let's say, your fire and lightning. You can go to the crafting bench and add a bit of resistance. You can also do this to get a little bit of extra damage. That's another really useful thing for this. We can grab this wand over here, for example, and usually in PoE 1, if you get a wand like this during the campaign, you might say like, oh, I have like a low level essence. I'm going to use that, like this essence of woe, make it rare, maybe get a bit lucky. I have an open suffix. Let's see what I can do. Maybe like a bit of cast speed. So you can add on cast speed. So this is just a way to fill out your character and fill in their gaps to get a bit more resistance, life, damage. In the end game, this gets way more complicated. Don't worry about it for now. One other thing you can do with the crafting bench is alter sockets. So I was speaking about sockets earlier. As you go through the campaign, you can get these guaranteed crafts. So this, if you want 2 sockets, costs 1 jeweler's orb, 3 for this. You can change it. You can go up to 4. And then 5 and 6. And the same with links and also with socket colors. One thing to mention is that socket colors are related to an item's attribute requirements. So this item has an attribute requirement of Dex and Intelligence, which means that it will tend to roll green sockets from the Dexterity and more blue sockets from the Intelligence. So if I had an item like this and I wanted 6 red sockets on it, it would be a bit of a pain, but there are some ways around it. I wouldn't worry too much about that for now. As you can see, there are things that are white sockets and there are some clever tricks you can get around it, but try not to be overwhelmed by all of this. The most useful things as a new player are probably going to be things like essences and then your basic orbs. One other thing to mention, exalted orbs in PoE 1 are far rarer than they are in PoE 2. They're the same rarity as a divine orb. So if you find one of these, don't use it wastefully. It's easier to do like a reforge than it is to build an item up from the ground 1 mod at a time. Again, with the crafting, don't be overwhelmed. Don't be like, oh, there's all these crafting things. And then you click the exotic and you're like, oh, what the hell are these? And then you go into there and you're like, what are these essences? And then there's this hoarder crafting station and the crafting bench and the recombinator and fossils. Don't panic. You don't have to know all this stuff. Really, you don't. Learn one thing. Use that and you will be fine. And then as you get more interested in different parts of the game, you'll be excited to know, oh, there's these things called fossils. How do these work? Now let's go over the difference between PoE 1 and 2's endgame. So PoE 1, we don't have the whole infinite atlas thing. Instead, we have this set atlas. So this is one that has been fully explored. And instead of having just neutral maps that you put a waystone into and then the game has already predetermined which map that is, like you would put a waystone in on a Mesa map and that would open a portal to Mesa. PoE 1, there are a series of maps that are specific locations. This allows players to run the same area repeatedly if they choose to. There's certain league mechanics that are better on certain maps than others, and this allows you that level of control to say, I want to do this strategy on this map with a layout that I know. So here's the map tab. And you can see like here the tier 1 maps, alleyways, bone crypt, rampart. We don't just have generic waystone tiers. It is like a terrace map tier 1. So if I were to put this in my map device, I would get a portal. And in fact, this is probably the worst map device I could have used because in PoE 1, you are not limited to fewer than 6 portals per map. You will always have 6 portals on a map. Even if that map is rare, higher tier, doesn't matter, you always get 6 portals. One difference is that if you leave the map to, let's say, make a trade, which hopefully we won't have to do as much in PoE 1, you will close that portal and you will still have the remaining 5. If you die, you'll be kicked out of the map and have to go back in, which also consumes a portal. So you have 6 portals, and those maps that open will take you into that specific map. So I put in a terrace map, and now I'm in terrace. And as you explore the atlas, you will learn these different layouts and see which ones are nice and which ones are a little bit less nice. Another thing is, whenever you complete a new map for the first time with the bonus objective, you will be granted an atlas skill point. So for white maps, these are like your low tier, your tier 1 maps, tier 3 up to tier 5. Bonus, kill boss of magic or higher version of this map. Going into yellow maps is tier 6 to 10. Bonus, kill boss of rare version of this map. So you'll need to make your map rare. And then for red maps, you have to kill a corrupted rare version of this map. And each time you complete a new map objective, you get an atlas skill point. Don't panic, please. Okay? I'm sure you're all familiar with the PoE 2 atlas tree. Well, welcome to the PoE 1 atlas tree. The horror and panic that you may be feeling looking at this might be reminiscent of the first time you saw the passive skill tree, but you should now know, instead of being threatened and scared of this, you should be so excited by it, because this is why PoE 1 is so special and so good and so interesting in the endgame. There is this atlas skill tree. Once you've done everything, you will be granted like a total of 132 points, which you can allocate to change the effects of certain league mechanics. In PoE 2, I'm sure you're familiar with like Expedition, Breach, Abyss. PoE 1, we have a lot more. So we still got strong boxes, we have essences, but we have things like Harvest, and we have Expedition, Abyss, Breach, Legion, Ritual, that's familiar, Blight, Ultimatum, Mirrors of Delirium, Ore Deposit. Actually, more than I realized will be familiar. I encourage you to not be overwhelmed by this, but instead try to be excited by this. And instead of saying, oh no, I have to learn all of this, instead say, you know what? I'm going to play PoE 1 3.27 for the first time. If I get to the end game, I'm gonna just try Expedition, and that's it. Just Expedition. Maybe throw some essences in there because I'm familiar with those from PoE 2. But don't stress. You don't have to learn all of this immediately. It is a lot to take in, but you're fully able to customize your endgame experience. And this, combined with one other thing, again, don't panic, is the other piece of the puzzle. And that is, promise you're not going to panic. Please, don't worry. All right, okay. PoE 2, we've got tablets. PoE 1, we have Scarabs. Now, Scarabs are sort of like pre-rolled tablets that affect different content. So, for example, let's look at one with a specific league mechanic. So what's something that's familiar? Ambush, so strongboxes. We got strongboxes in PoE 1 and PoE 2. Area contains 3 additional strongboxes, and you can put 3 in your map device total. When you fully unlock your map device, you will have 6 slots, 1 for your map and then 5 for Scarabs. When you start out, it's just 4, and then as you progress, you'll unlock more. But this just lets you see the potential. So additional strongboxes, chances for strongbox to be openable again, increased effective explicit mods, and then strongboxes are more likely to be the rarer varieties. We've got stuff for Ultimatum. You won't be familiar with that. Harbinger, you won't know. Area contains an additional expedition encounter. Area has 100% increased number of runic monster markers, limit 2. Expedition encounters 50% increased number of explosives and increased explosive radius. And remnants in expedition encounters have 2 additional suffixes and prefixes. So when you're in the endgame, don't try and learn all of this. I don't know all of these off by heart. There's no shot. But just be aware that these Scarabs exist and that you can use them to juice up your content. So this combined with this is theory crafting heaven for the end game. Not only do you have a build to theory craft, but you have these end game strategies that you're able to design and test and calculate the results of. And then you might say, oh, but actually I want to make a new build that's really good at this strategy and give it a try. There are plenty of PoE YouTubers who put out Atlas strategy tests. I'm one of them. So you don't have to worry about designing your own, but you can check out what other people are doing and what their tree looks like and which Scarabs they're using in the endgame. But I'm just trying to get you, instead of scared of the endgame in PoE 2, to instead be excited by it, because there are just an infinite number of possibilities. And even if you only explore 1 or 2 of those possibilities, you'll still have so much fun and you'll have so much to look forward to in future leagues as well. That's probably going to do it for now. What I recommend, again, don't try everything. Do 1 or 2 things, play 1 build, explore a bit of the end game. Just say, I don't need to learn what a tainted oil is. That's something for another league. I don't need to learn what all the div cards are. I'll try essences. Just take it as you come. Just remember this. Focus on what you are doing instead of what you aren't doing, and have fun. And another thing is, if you play PoE 2 and you try PoE 1 and you don't like it, that's fine too. Maybe you think this game sucks, and that is totally a-okay. But I really, really hope you like it, because I love PoE 2, but PoE 1 is something special that I really, really would love more people to get into and give a try. So that's going to be it. I'll link the written guides in the description that I mentioned. And only other thing I can say is don't be scared to follow a build guide. And if you do follow a build guide as a new player, play RF, unless it got nerfed, but it'll probably still be good. So play RF. Anyway, have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Catch you in the next video, and bye-bye.